Welcome back. This is your host Siris King. On this episode, I'm going to talk about the astral world, inner world, and why the astral is so hard to understand. Now, when I say the astral plane, and when I say the inner world, I'm actually talking about two different. I'm sorry. I'm actually talking about the same thing. The problem is that for a lot of people, they know the term astral, right? And when I say problem, I don't mean I don't. When I say problem, it's nothing really wrong with saying the astral world, but I think what ends up happening is like in shaman, like a lot of old school, more shamanistic traditions would always say the inner world, right, in various languages. And part of that is because, and note, when I say shamanism, yes, shamanism, if you're using the word shamanism, it's coming from Siberia, the Central Asian region. When I say shamanistic traditions, I'm talking about animist traditions that are more indigenous, and it could be from Australia, North America, South America, Africa, etc., etc., etc. They wouldn't say shaman, but whatever, Sangoma or other names, but it's just traditions that practice a more nature-based system, right? They would really say more the inner world, and I think when you say astral world, you don't realize that the way to get to that world or that realm is from your mind, from inside of yourself. And I think the inner world, for me personally, is a better way of explaining it. Now, it's interesting because so then somebody will say, well, okay, well, if you say the inner world, does that mean that it actually exists as in your mind? And that's kind of interesting. It's kind of an interesting question because part of the reason why the astral world or the inner world is so hard to understand is because it has to be experienced. It's so different than our world. And our world is based on the world of matter, 3D, third dimension. So different that it can only be experienced. So when you have people who, and I have in the description a list of some material that you can pick up that talks about this, even though like a few of the books might talk about other, like it might mention astral, but I have specific books on the astral in my description, right? And I've always found that when you want to get into the astral plane, the hermeticists for the most, because shamans don't really write stuff down, so the hermeticists, like usually when you see a shamanist, like anything from the shamanistic traditions written down, most of the time it's fake. I just be honest. Most of the time it's a learned man or learned woman pretending to be initiated or pretending to have information. Like shamans don't really write stuff down, to be honest, because just that shamanism is usually coming, and again, animist traditions, it's coming from more of an indigenous point of view. And when you become westernized, it's very hard for them to explain to you. Like they can explain certain things, but it's very hard for them to explain it where you can learn it good enough that they can teach you, right? So from my experience, hermeticists are really good at writing stuff down, and they have the better understand. Not that they have the better understanding, but in terms of material that you can pick up to talk about the astral, their views of the astral, their written material in the astral is the best from my perspective. So the stuff I have in the description are books that you can pick up that will help you understand this a little better. And it's interesting because from my point of view, the astral is it's something that could only be experienced. So when somebody's telling you, like when somebody who knows what they're doing is telling you about the astral, they're giving you almost like a map, right? And even that is sort of very hard to explain because on one level, the astral, astral could be so many different things at the same time, right? So on one level, it could be, our world could be a copy of the astral, right? So meaning the astral is so massive that everything that takes place in our world takes place in the astral. But everything that takes place in the astral does not take place in our world. So the astral has more possibilities. So on one level, our world is a copy of the astral. So everything that happens in our world happens in the astral. But the astral has more things to happen. So that's one level. That's one possibility. Then on the other part, it can just be nothingness, right? And when it's darkness or nothingness, the darkness or nothingness could just be pure energy. And when you perceive it as darkness or nothingness, it's just energy or chaos that hasn't been given form or hasn't been used, right? So for some people, some people could go there and it's just energy. So somebody will say, well, what does the energy part come in? Perfect example. For most people, right, we all sleep. And when we sleep, our body heals itself, right? Our conscious mind shuts off and our body and our subconscious takes over and our body begins to heal itself. Now, for 9 out of 10 people, that's the only time they access the astral, when they're sleeping, right? Now, for people who are yogis, shamans, magicians, whoever, ceremonial magicians, I mean, if they know what they're doing, they can access the astral when they're awake. So when they access it when they're awake, that means they can access energy that's not being used when they're awake. That can make them invent things better, can make them create things better. For some people, who knows? It can make them maybe do things that some people would say is miraculous. Many different things can be used with that energy. So the difference is 9 out of 10 people, I won't even say 9 out of 10 people, 99 out of 100 people, when they only access that when they're sleeping. And because they're sleeping, they're not conscious of it. So all that it does is it just heals your body. Resets your body, heals it, or attempts to at least. You dream. When you dream, you might be thinking of the dreams might be telling you some conditions of your subconscious mind. Because remember, your subconscious mind of any human doesn't sleep. So the part of your brain that sleeps is actually your conscious mind, right? So for some people, I just described two different things. On one level, it's a map, or not even a map. It's our world is a copy of the astral. So the astral has its own rules, right? Meaning it's its own world. Like it's a world, right? Just like ours. On one level. Next level, depends on the part of the astral, it can just be pure energy, right? Pure and simple. You can perceive it as darkness. You can perceive it as nothingness. If you perceive it like any of those things, it's just untapped energy that somebody hasn't given form yet. So it's just energy that's waiting to be used, right? So that's two different parts. That's two different things. Now, when somebody hears the first part where they say, well, okay, well, our world is a copy of it. So what's so hard to understand? Here's the problem. Our world is a copy of it, but it has much more possibilities in our world, right? So what ends up happening is, even though our world is a copy of it, when your mind perceives it opposite. So in the astral, when you compare the astral to our world, one major thing that you see is it's the opposite of our world. So, for instance, and when I say it's the opposite of our world, it's only the opposite of our world right now because it's in balance. So when they're perfectly balanced, you could almost perceive it as almost exactly the same, right? But when it's out of balance, you perceive it as opposite. And part of the reason why is because there's so much probabilities, the brain can't comprehend it. Because in the astral, for instance, what people perceive as the astral plane, one part of it is, science would say, is the fourth dimension, right? So that's time is based there too. So first description, I said, okay, it's a world that's like ours, but ours is a copy. Second description, because it's big. It's much bigger than our world, right? It's so big that you can't even say size. I used to, in my younger days, describe the astral as being 3 times bigger than our world. I can't even describe it like that. It's beyond size, really. It could be like 3 times bigger than our world if you're looking at it from the human part of the astral, which I'm going to get to in a second. Because the astral has different components. So, yes, first level. I'm not going to say the first level. One part of it could be a copy of our world, or our world's a copy of it. Second part could be pure energy. Then it's the fourth dimension, so time is based there. So another difference is when you deal with the time part of the astral plane, time is like space. So in astral, 1945 always exists. So 1945 in astral is like a place that you can go to. 1945 is a place, 1965 is a place. 1 million AD is a place. They're all places that you can go to, right? The difference is when something is the future, it's more a probability. When something is the past, it's solid, right? So you can go there. 1945, you can go. 1965, you can go. So it's a place as well. So it's time, but the way you perceive it, it's a place that's like a never-ending loop. So that's why then when people talk about that, when some of the masters of the East will talk about the Akashic records, that's what they're talking about. The astral also, because it's time based, it records everything. Everything that ever was, everything ever will be, right? So it gets recorded. So all of a sudden, I just entered a third type, or third function the astral has. First function, our world is a copy of it. Second function is pure energy. Third function is time-based. And this is all taking place in the same realm. You may not perceive it like that, but it's all taking place in the same realm. So the part of it so for instance, in our world, it's time and space, right? So today's November, right? About to be December, right? November 31st, about to be December. Okay, so that's the time part, and I'm in a certain location, right? The East Coast, boom, right? That's a certain location. Now, when you deal with the astral plane, you would almost, time itself is the location. So it's similar, but it's a little bit opposite. And so then that's why, especially when you do the fourth dimensional part of astral, because astral is the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension, right? When you deal with the fourth dimensional part of the astral, it's outside of space, it's time. So that's one reason. It's not the only reason why, but that's one reason why you don't see it, you don't perceive it. It's in a higher dimension, right? A higher vibration, but at the same time, it's not spatial. Now, the fifth and sixth dimension could be spatial, but it's so high you don't see it. But the fourth dimension is time based. So the fourth dimension is one of the most unique dimensions that we have. And so people will be listening to this video and be like, okay, what is it? Like, I went on three or four different areas, right? But this is why it's so hard to understand the astral. And this is why, like, when you go in the East, like, if you notice, when you look at stuff here in the West, people are very into astral projection, and they, it's like, it becomes like some weird type of superhero fetish, right? The masters in the East, when they talk about astral projecting, they're talking about the topics I'm talking about now, but experiencing it. And they understand that even for a person who is advanced, it could take them like 60 years, 50 years to understand even understand what I'm talking about. Based on experience. You have to experience it for years. Because like I said, some people look at it as, oh, okay, it's like our world. They have cities, they have, people that have populations, right? Which are what we could be considered dead people. Their populations, they have all these things, and just like our world. And then you say, okay, well, I get that part. Then other parts of it, it's just nothingness, which is pure energy, which is waiting for someone to use it, right? Then the other part of it is time based, right? It's time, like it's a record that you can go back and live and experience. And when you go back and live and experience in the physical, you could perceive it as a record of events. And some people could even call that Akashic records. Everything that ever was, everything ever will be. The only thing is, everything ever will be. The future is a possibility. So it might venture off into different possibilities. You might have 5 or 6 or 7 different lanes it goes into. Where the past is more solid, right? So then when you look at all this, you say, whoa. And this is why the masters in the East will take years to even perceive what I'm describing. And then anytime someone describes it, they're only describing it, or they should describe it, with the intentions of giving you a sort of map that you can experience, in a sense, because when you do this yourself, like, imagine going into that world. And when you say going into the world, remember, like I said, 99 of 100 people do not consciously go into it. They only experience it when they're sleeping. And when they experience it when they're sleeping, they're lucky if they have this. They go to sleep 7 days a week. And I mean, the average person, if they go to sleep 7 days a week, you're lucky if you remember 2 dreams a week. You're probably lucky, right? So this is not something that is easy to understand. And it has its own rules and mechanisms. And that's why when you see someone who's, and I don't like you use the word enlightened, but a spiritually experienced individual, it takes them years. Like, I would say, even if a person is very talented in the astral plane, which I'm not naturally, it'd probably take a person, like, if they didn't get a map and they just winging it, not winging it, but like alert person, so you're reading books on projection and stuff like that. And remember, a lot of these things are more dangerous as well, because, and when I say look, these things are more dangerous, because the astral, just like the physical, it has its own dangers. It has its own things that are assets. There's things in the astral that's assets to you. There's things that's dangerous to you, right? So it's just the same as the physical world. Just like if you were going in the jungle and there's things that you're supposed to know, certain type of snakes and insects, got to know how to avoid them, right? And then certain type of plants could be poisonous. The astral, remember what I just said. There's a part of it that's our world's a copy of it, but it has more possibilities. So that means it has more good things, and that means it has more bad things, right? And so when you look at it from that aspect, if you're a person who has the right material, you're doing it yourself, right? It's still going to take a long time to understand it, to navigate it. That's why I pushed hermetic materials in the descriptions, because you will have to know how to banish. You would have to. It's a lot of different things that you should know before you start navigating that, in my opinion, even attempting to, right? And a lot of times, what you would see is meditation is really the key. That's why I like the word inner world, because meditation, because basically when most people in the West don't realize is meditation itself is actually connected to astral without even knowing it. That's why I said inner world, right? So to highlight it before I go into meditation, look what I just described. These different avenues of the astral plane. One part, like our world, but bigger, right? Meaning ours is a copy of it, but it's much bigger. Second part could be nothingness, pure energy, right? That's waiting to be used, that you could perceive as darkness, right? Third part, time-based. Time is centered there, right? It's recording everything. It gives you access to seeing things to come. That's 3 different parts. And then I'm not even describing, if you want to merge the science, is the 4th and the 5th dimension, which comes in as well, right? This comes in as well, but we'll get to that. So just off those things, that's a lot. It could take years to even figure this stuff out. Because even if you went to the part, because a large part of people who are, I don't want to say obsessed, but curious about life after death, the part of the astral that, like I said, we're a copy of, that's more related to that part, right? That part, meaning when a person is deceased, they're going to the astral plane, right? You have the astral plane, and you have the mental plane above it. In order to get to the mental plane above it, you got to go to the astral first, then you go to the mental plane, right? So the mental plane is higher. You could perceive it 6th, 7th dimension. Once you go past 7, you go into a different world completely, right? That's a whole nother topic. The mental plane is a whole nother topic. Probably cover that as well in another video. So when you look at it from this point of view, I can even go into more, like when you do the astral, I can go into more probabilities, because remember, okay, like think of it like you have the mental plane as one extreme, you have the physical plane as one extreme, the astral is in the middle, right? So when the astral is in the middle, it has qualities of both. So what if the physical does the astral have the qualities of? I just told you, the physical is a copy of the astral, so the astral has parts of it that feel physical. When you're alive and you're dreaming, it doesn't feel physical. But when a person passes, this realm, it's just as physical to them as our realm is to us, right? So you have that part. But as well, so then what's the properties of the mental plane it has? The properties of the mental plane it has is that the astral totally connects to your thoughts far more than the physical does. And this is the part that's very hard for people to comprehend. And some of the Hermetic material, and I have some Eastern material that you can see in the description, like the books, they go into that. Meaning, it's very hard at times to understand that, like when we say you must be mindful, like when they say in the East, you must be mindful of your thoughts. This is what this means. If you got 2 people, both die, one person's thoughts is on a different level vibrationally, they probably will experience, especially when you do the 4th dimension, because basically what happens is The fifth dimension is more spatial based. So that's more fixed. It's more permanent. The fourth dimension, or the lower part of astral, like the higher part of astral is the fifth, lower part's the fourth. The lower part is more conscious based, or your thoughts affect it more than it does the fifth. The fifth is more solid. So if two people die, they both go to the fourth, they will experience vastly different experiences. And not being able to navigate through that can almost trap the spirit in that realm. Or if even they're not trapped, they will have a harder time going up and down. So when the Christians used to talk about limbo, that's partly what they're talking about. So the goal is to go to, obviously, the higher realm, 7, right? But if you're kind of stagnated, you could perceive that as limbo. And I would say Hermeticists out of all the different spiritual systems, based on even in my experiences, is by far the closest. It's not even close. By far, like outside of the shamans. Like I said, shamans, the real shamans don't write no goddamn books. I'm just saying. You see these guys pushing some of this material, they're learned men pretending to be shamans, which is okay. But you should just say you're a learned man. You're not a shaman. You're just a learned man. Or learned woman. So when you do the Hermeticists, the Hermetic material, like one thing the Hermeticists understood is that being that they're the first spiritual system outside shamanism, and I'm going to leave the shamans by themselves. Outside shamanism, the Hermeticism is the first system. So all the other systems have pieces of what I'm describing. Yeah, there's pieces, like the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which is in the description as well. It's a very good, very important material to understand when you deal with the astral. No question. But it's a piece. The Gnostic Book of Mary Magdalene, talk about astral, a piece. But a Hermetic system, Hermetic material, have the most complete understanding of astral I've seen that matches my experience. So, and a lot of times, this is not really about even telling you who's better, who's not better. This is more about, because one thing that when I even use the word the inner world, right? And this is why I'm going to lead into meditation now, right? Especially the fourth, because the fourth is so connected to your thoughts and vibrational energy that a lot of times you will experience certain things based on, in the fourth dimension, based on your thoughts, your vibrational pattern, right? So it's extremely important to use a healthy map, because all this stuff I'm describing, if you do it right, it could take 60, 70 years. Could sometimes take lifetimes. I'm being honest. It could take lifetimes, right? So the better material you start with before you start engaging in it, the quicker. And when I say quicker, like, this is not something you're going to get. Like, even if you were a gifted mother, you could be a gifted mother effer. You ain't getting this in 10 years. It's going to take a while, right? But even if once it takes a while, what happens is you understand that if you start with very good material or a good map, you could enhance your speed, you go faster. And when you go faster, and when I say go faster, like, it's not going to be fast. It's not going to get us in 5 years. But you can enhance your experience. And then it leads up into better, because somebody would say, a lot of people who are into the question of life after death, this obviously helps them. But even people who want to enhance their everyday life, because remember what I just said, the truly spiritually activated individual accesses this energy when they're awake, right? And a person who's not awake, a normal person, only accesses when they sleep. And when they sleep, it just basically maybe helps heal your body, rest up, and you feel refreshed when you get up in the morning. Or, you have a dream, and the dream could tell you the condition of your subconscious mind. But when you are the shaman, the shamanist, the yogi, the yogina, the magician, the witch, the person who, for that individual, they can access it when they're awake. So somebody will say, well, how would they access it when you're awake? And this is why I like to use the word inner world, or the inner planes. Because when you meditate, technically, you're partially going into that world. Now the difference is when you're meditating, you are kind of a little part of you is in the inner world, right? Which is gonna be the fourth dimension, which your mind is like your mind's your door. So you have when you go inside your mind, and then you have it where you go through the door of your mind and you go outside into the outer fourth dimension, right? Connected, but a little different. It's like, think of it like if you say you're in Texas and you have a house in Texas. Your house is your brain or your mind, right? Your house is your mind. And when you go outside your house, you're in Texas, right? Your house is still in Texas, but then when you go outside your house, that's the outer Texas, right? So you're still in Texas, but you're outside your house now. The mind is no different. The fourth dimension partly is in your mind, but then you go outside your mind and go into the greater fourth dimension. So then when a person meditates in the beginning, they're doing this on a subtle level, right? Some people, because there's different types of meditation, some people actually stop thinking. Remember, when you dream because your conscious mind is sleeping, stops, right? It's sleeping, it's dormant, and then your subconscious takes over. Some people learn to suspend their thought when they're meditating, and then let their conscious mind, let their subconscious mind start to project images to them, whatever the case might be, right? That's related to sleep. The difference is that eventually some people, this is when you get more advanced, you meditate for years, because it takes years to really master meditation. And I don't even say master meditation, but master meditation enough that the next stage is when you're walking meditation, when you are, even though you're walking and you're operating, you could be working, you could be going to school, you are relaxed enough that your mind is able to kind of simulate meditation even when you're awake and talking to people. For those individuals can access the astral consciously. And in that way, they'll access energy for, like I said, everyone uses energy for different things. Some people use energy for their music, to create art, to whatever, whatever the case might be, to get inspired, to be an inventor. For others, maybe to actually harness energy and bring it back to this realm and do miraculous acts. There's almost no limit to it in that sense. But that individual who's doing that has gone through the meditation stage and went to the next level, where they walk and meditate, when they're able to stay calm enough that they can simulate meditation in their everyday life. That takes you a while. But that's how then the astral will benefit you every day. It's not just about life after death and preparing for death, which is important. And it's also not about experiencing different worlds, which again has that too, right? But it's also about being able to better your everyday life. And in fact, the ability, like usually when you're sleeping and you only harness it when you're able to sleep, your health will probably be on a lower level, to be honest, than a person who can access it when they're awake. And the reason, and like I said, part of it is everything is the opposite. So I'll give you a fun. So, because I know I didn't explain that too clearly or too much detail. Better, I didn't explain too much detail, but I'll give you a perfect example. In the physical, this is how complete opposite it is. In the astral, the things that are older have the most power, right? So you take a gun in the physical. No one argue in the physical. A gun has more power than a bow and arrow, no question, right? In the physical, but in the astral plane, a bow and arrow has more power than a gun. The constructs that are older have more power, because the older they are, the more energy they have, right? So if the sun is 14 billion years old, by human understanding, well, it's not. The Big Bang is 14 billion years old. Let's say the sun is like 4 billion years old, 4.45 billion years old, right? If something's 4 billion years old in the astral plane, it would have more power than if something's 100 years old, right? And then you might say, okay, well, think about what I just said. In the physical, the gun has more power. In the astral, the bow and arrow has more power. In the physical, the male species seems more dominant. In the astral, the female species is more dominant. In the physical, the younger races, right, are the powerful races. In the astral, the indigenous races are the stronger races. Everything, I'm not going to say everything, but most things we experience as opposites. Now, what spiritual scientists understand is, even though it's the opposites for now, the physical is a copy of the astral. So the physical is actually trying to realign itself with the astral plane. So it means when we're describing all these things, eventually the physical will look like the astral. So it's almost like saying, that's why you have some gun people. That's why you got, like, there's a saying among some gun enthusiasts, right? That you learn the bow and arrow, you learn archery first, then you learn how to use a gun. It just makes you a better shot, right? So what is that really saying? Well, the physical is eventually it's going to copy the astral again. That's the difference. So that's why industrialized society. So, like, for instance, the cities, right? You take a city, take a village, like a, I don't know, medieval village, or even a kind of garden, right? In astral, the garden has more power. That's why they say the Garden of Eden. They don't say the City of Eden. See the difference? So even something as simple as a boat versus a spaceship, because one of the first things that people recently have been discovering is when people are talking about aliens, right? When people are talking about aliens, most things that people talk about aliens is not really physical aliens. It's just astral intelligences that people perceive when they're sleeping, right? Then that's why, I mean, if a lot of the alien stuff was so as real as people say, like, that's why you don't feel no evidence of them, because a lot of that stuff is just astral phenomenon that people are mistaken for aliens. Here's the problem: if you say a spaceship, right? Let's say you say, okay, an alien's on a spaceship in astral, right? That's like saying the ship, because it's so modern, has actually less power or less energy than if somebody says a man is on a boat. A man's on a boat, right? A boat is one of the oldest forms of travel. A camel is one of the oldest forms of travel. Camels, boats, horses, chariots have more energy than a craft does. So when a person says a craft, that's saying it doesn't exist, but you're dealing with lesser energies. That's why when you deal with shamans, a lot of the shamans, the sangomas, a lot of the medicine men in the Americas, they understood that what people describing as outer world phenomenon, right? Those spirits or those intelligences are lesser powers. If you're describing them as a guy on a ship, that's where that came from. So when you understand this concept, a lot of different things will start to make sense. And when you see how the spiritual world, or like the world that people, the New Age communities, hit a brick, when it came, like a brick wall, when it came to aliens, that's why. Because our world's a copy, and our world eventually will match the astral again. Like right now, it's the opposites because there's imbalance. You know, when they say in the East, the Dark Ages versus the Golden Ages, the Dark Ages is more imbalanced. The Dark Ages is when things become opposite. The higher ages, the Gold Age, the Silver Age, is when it's more perfect replica. As they say, that kingdom come on earth as it's in heaven, perfect replica. That's the difference. So when it comes to the astral politics, all these things have to be taken into account before you really start to understand it, let alone navigate it. So enjoy the materials I gave. You know, you can purchase them, and they will help you understand, or help you begin to understand, the inner worlds. And the inner worlds is something that we all should have access to equally. But sometimes we need a map. That's one thing I always loved about the Kabbalist's Tree of Life. The Tree of Life was just a map of the astral and mental planes and higher. It's just a basic map. Yeah, you can go navigate, and that's the mind too. Like, the map is the map. That's what I used to say. Sometimes you see in Kabbalah, they'll say, it's a map of the mind. Then sometimes they say it's a map of the universe. They're actually both. The universe, the foundation of it, is mental. So yeah, you can go without a map and go there lost. But with the tree, it was a map, teach you how to navigate, and there's no better map than the tree. So enjoy, and until next time, peace.